that's called that goes along with the revision. So I'll wait till the revision. No, I'll introduce the revision a bit now. Put the diagram, I'll hold the diagram up a bit later. Last week, Sunday, I talked about hope. And I talked about hope in terms of the Pelham material, and particularly in Cease. We just started. Do you just want to come in?
Yeah. What is your? I missed the beginning.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Just name and place, okay?
Oh, okay. Cease, Tampa, Florida.
Okay. Yeah, last week I was talking about hope in relation to the material that we've been looking at. And I want to explore it again today in terms of some of the most subtle Pelham material, which is called the unconscious contribution. And this part of the material, and if we look at it in terms of hope, the unconscious contribution, put in a simple way, is that which we communicate and we are not aware of the communication. And in terms of just hold, give me a minute. In terms of the effect of our communication, in terms of hope, there's something about hope that needs to be, at best, needs to be communicated in an unconscious way. There's some things we do at best, some of the very best part of us is the unconscious contribution. And that is like, I talk in Pelham about a basic metaphor is how a nourishing family works. And this is relevant to one part of it, the way we use nourishing family is relevant to conscious and unconscious contribution. In that, the reason we say, Pelham's basic metaphor is a family. We don't run away from the fact that there can be evil in families, just the same as there can be evil in the church. There can be evil in spiritual movements. We don't. There can be, hard to put it into words, but there can be, and people would probably criticize me about this particular use of the words, but there can be evil in love. There certainly can, and so the unconscious contribution as a family can be nourishing or destructive. An unconscious contribution can be nourishing or destructive. So there's a dark side of the unconscious contribution. The positive side of the unconscious contribution, which I'm mainly looking at now, is well, to use that word, the love, the belief in somebody else, the belief in ourselves, the sense in ourselves that there are good days up ahead. That is what communicates hope to people. But very often that communication of hope, not always, but very often, and in some of its most profound and effective forms, hope is communicated as an unconscious contribution. We're not even, how you can, well, example come to mind, King Lear, Shakespeare's King Lear is one of the most sort of darkest bits of literature there is. And not everyone likes Shakespeare, just the same as not everyone likes Christmas. That gets at memory links, okay? And memory links are certainly important. Memory links are hugely important in terms of the destructive side of the unconscious contribution. But so not everyone likes Shakespeare. I'll try not to get too rambly. But if you're into it, there's desolate sort of ending of this play, and you sort of come away with almost a sense of something good. And that's sort of, someone who is a political leader or we take political figures that are far enough away not to be controversial. FDR, American president, and Winston Churchill would be saying, it is terrible. We are in a terrible time. And I offer you nothing but blood, sweat, and tears. And yet they conveyed hope. That's what somehow or other, with some sort of magic, that's what Shakespeare does with King Lear. That's what the Greek authors who wrote tragedy sort of convey that humanity, and William Faulkner, humanity goes through this, but within the presenting of the dismal, they are communicating something that is deeply hopeful. And that happens within a family where the unconscious contribution is, in a sense, best studied, because the family is going through whatever they're going through, squabbles, disagreements, fight over the holiday or fight over what programs playing on television. But within a nourishing family, there's the unconscious contribution with all of that, that simply makes almost be a bit technically, the family as a unit and the individuals within it stronger. The mistake, the terrible holiday that just where nothing worked, or a loss in a family, a big loss in a family. And yet within a nourishing family, that negativity is sort of transferred into, we are together, we know each other, leaving the word love out. We want to help each other, and that communicates on an unconscious level. One of the ways to understand the unconscious, because we talk about unconscious contribution. The conscious contribution, if you remember this material, is that which builds us authority. The conscious contribution is, I'm the director of the Pellon Institute. I can teach this material. I'm good at it. And I can talk about how, this material is really good. It's good as anything around, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on that way. And it's quite appropriate. It works. You can't do the same thing in a family. If you go, aren't we a great family? Something will be lost. I'm not saying occasionally it isn't spoken, but even the sort of, some of the times the way it's spoken, like, the greatest mummy in the world, that is a mug that is given by, a child to mummy on Mother's Day. So, it's almost got a sort of, it's got an edge to it. It's got a joke to it. So you can't say, "Oh, I'm a great parent." You might feel it at times, but almost any parent, if someone says, "Hey, you're a good dad," you see that in your kids. Oh yeah, but I'm really not in touch with my grandkids. I'm a flop. Any good parent will bring in that sort of point of criticism, self-criticism. And I would put that, because this is a very subtle and powerful tool, the unconscious contribution. Let me just go back to definitions a bit, which I lost track of. So the conscious contribution is that which I know I can do. In some sense, it's work, but not just work. The conscious contribution is knowing that I'm the one who puts on the good meals, or I'm the one who brings in the salary, or I'm the one who organizes the holidays. There's a certain sense of conscious contribution in a family. And there's a certain conscious contribution is, you will go to bed on your bedtime. something however old you are. And if you're my age, you will go to bed. You will not stay up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So there's a certain sense within a family, there's some of those sort of very conscious things. And around finances, mortgages, homes, bank accounts. There's conscious contribution in a family. But that which makes a nourishing family, a really nourishing family, a whole bunch of it is the unconscious contribution. Now, it can almost be the teasing the teasing of a father or the teasing of a grandfather.
So it's not after all I've done for you. No. Those comments aren't unconscious contributions, right? That's manipulation.
Yeah. That almost, Stacey, proves the point. If you go from the unconscious contribution to the conscious contribution, you break it. I don't know if people follow Doonesbury, and I guess Doonesbury's getting a little old now, but one of the characters, his father was a successful businessman, and he was gay. Took some while to come out. His father was a sort of right-wing businessman, and his son was sort of lefty, and then came out as gay. So the father presented, I think it was on his birthday, he presented him with a bill, okay, like, 1,800, no, I'm sorry, $187,257. This is the amount of money I have spent on you, okay? It was almost sort of, I don't know, it just, you don't do that. You don't add up the figures about how much money you're spending on your kids. You just don't do it. But you better do it at work or your business will go under. So that's almost just a clear where the conscious contribution and the unconscious contribution sort of lies. So it's very, very subtle. It's a very powerful tool because it opens up solutions to issues and problems. I guess a lot of our stuff about feedback in other places, and we've taught about it here, but feedback is more in the therapeutic programs and in the forums. But it is a lot about the unconscious contribution and how it works. A couple of ways you can see it. If someone is really beautiful and they're conscious of their beauty, something will happen. Won't quite work. And it's not that the person doesn't know they're beautiful, but it needs to be sort of an unconscious contribution to the world. And it needs to sort of stay there. And, you get the same thing. If someone is conscious of their beauty in that sense, they'll end up being brittle, and that will end up taking something away. If someone's conscious of their wisdom, they're going to be a bore. It's got to not be there. And at time, the poet William Blake said, if we try to hold on to happiness too hard, it'll go. Some of that, and that's the unconscious contribution. And of course, it's hard to get at because it's got to stay unconscious. And but if the unconscious contribution, yes, in love and sexual relations, so much of it, to work, it's got to be sort of unconscious. It's hugely important, but it almost needs to have a certain sort of lightness. But if there are problems there, then so the unconscious contribution is not nourishing, it's destructive, then that unconscious contribution has to be made conscious. That's absolutely true of sex therapy, where sex at its best has all sorts of unconscious contribution to it. If things are going wrong, then it's got to be made conscious. If the sex therapy is going to work out, along the way, it's got to sort of slip down to being unconscious again. But when there is making the unconscious conscious, there's certain awkwardness in there. It's what therapy is about. It's what all our stuff about. Feedback and is about. So bringing all that into hope, yeah, a couple of examples. One of the things I sort of struggled with very early on, before I met David Pellin, was this sort of conundrum that I just saw it, I just observed it. A good pediatrician is not necessarily a good parent. I just sort of saw that. And this just opened up that conundrum. That, yeah, my dad was a good dad. He was a school teacher. He didn't bring teaching home. He didn't bring his role as a teaching home, ever. I think he went too far with it. You know, so I developed habits of procrastinating on homework, which I've still got after all those years. But he was a quiet man, but he had, so I don't know how I got messages, but somehow or other I heard and stuck in my mind. He knew people. This was like, I was born in 1933, so this was literally in the 1930s and early 1940s. When I was a kid, he knew teachers who took home their role and how it didn't work. And he was really determined not to do that. So, yeah, Mary.
Well, I just had this thing that's always kind of puzzled me a bit about meeting John, that might be in the realm of the unconscious contribution. And I don't know, so just a question. So when at some point, how can I put this? The conscious thing I knew was that he still loved his wife after 42 years of marriage and a nasty breakup. But unconsciously, I knew that when I don't even remember if anything was said. I just knew it would be, if I stayed, it would be till death did us part. I knew this person would never leave me. And I couldn't possibly have broken up my previous way of life on something that might have evaporated. And I've always not quite known how I really knew that with this kind of certainty. So I just wondered if somehow that came across unconsciously. It may not be a question you can answer, but just...
No, I think that's right. I think it's a question I can't answer. I think it's a question we shouldn't be able to answer. I mean, I think there needs to be mysteries and love and who's attracted to who and what works and what doesn't work. You know, Dave Pellin used this statement, and it's not original to him, but I heard it from him. Never judge someone else's marriage, you know. And, you know, and I'm someone who's had 4 marriages that did not last. So even there, you know, there's a mystery. And, you know, I grew up in this happy childhood. And I have a sister who never married. Yet my parents were devoted to each other. So, you know, put your theories on top of all that, Peter Fleming or Sigmund Freud or somebody else. So I guess sort of what we're saying is, and that's why I come in on tools. And, you know, and I use it over and over again, but I've been reading and looking at him recently and reading an article on the David, which is Michelangelo's great sculpture. It seems that it's got weak ankles and it might fall. That's where the article was about. Yeah, Italy can sort of a bit good at going to the edge, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Anyway, to reassure you or reassure art lovers, it seems that, oh, and if there's an earthquake and he wobbles a bit, and there have been earthquakes in Florence, if it tilts a bit, that's where the ankles will break. It will fall and smash because it's a piece of marble that's 500 years old or something. So it's very brittle. Okay. So sorry about that little digression. Anyway, they're building something that it will sit on. Oh yeah, it relates to relevant to you, Tamara. It seemed it was first built in San Francisco. That's something they put under buildings to prevent them tilting when there's an earthquake. So they've developed something like that to put under sculptures. Is that what it is?
If you go with the wave action, you won't snap.
Oh, okay. Anyway, they've done something that, and they said it straight from San Francisco. Anyway, just sort of simple tools and that incredible piece of art that he made with these, and it's big, you know, the David is huge, like it's, I don't know, twice life size or something. And these simple tools, he made it with these simple tools. So going back to your question, Mary, sorry, that was a bit self-indulgent. Yeah, I think we're sort of looking at the mystery of stuff like that and probably never coming up with a quick answer. But, you know, if you wanted to talk about, you know, in a therapy, in a learning or exploring or even just reminiscing way, then I think what we'd be doing is looking at how you knew that. You know, what was that? How you knew that. But I think when we get into always, I think we've got to be careful of reducing the tools, reducing human mystery to the tools. Yeah, and that's why I do go on about Michelangelo, because he did have these simple tools. And he carved this thing. Yeah.
Can I just say,
yeah,
just because I want to dispel it, because I think it's a silly reaction I'm having. I'm sort of feeling a bit guilty for the fact that I puzzle about that, but that is, I don't have to feel guilty about it, right?
No, I think one could say that if you're puzzling about love, that's probably a very good thing to do. Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah.
You touched on something that I've been finding is true with the playback theater troupe that I'm doing playback. And it really is.
Steve, just say a little bit what playback theater is for everybody else.
So playback theater, there's a troupe. And then people come and tell a story about something in their life, something that it depends on what the theme of the theater is that night, but we have to listen to how the person tells the story, you know, their mood, the way they say it, to get in touch with how they're feeling. And there's usually several parts to a story, of course. And so to get in touch with that, and different players then will play different parts of that story. But we don't talk to each other. We just have to do it intuitively and about what we're going to do. We're not planning it. It has to be spontaneous. And so I think there's that element of being in touch with how that person is feeling, and then finding that in ourselves for what that would be like, and to be able to express that then. So what Mary was talking about, if somebody's talking about someone they love, we would probably be able to pick up on it and express that in different ways. People would have different ways of expressing that. But it's also letting go of fear in a way, of that stage fright, of just being able to be there. We're really in service to the person. So it's being, letting go. I mean, we're going to make mistakes. That happens all the time. But it kind of reminded me of this. They're not telling us I was really worried about this and all this stuff. We're just picking that up, you know? So I think it's a, I don't know whether you would call it a skill or something that can be developed when you start, at least with the playback, that you start to get more in touch with what people are saying and how and then be able to show it. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. No. And I think what you just did is what we need to do with the unconscious contribution is sort of look for the examples, because we can only sort of understand it if we've got those examples. And I think we can find examples of things we're working on, or I didn't mean working on, we can find things we are involved in, and then we can find, oh, that's the unconscious contribution there. I think that's the way to go with it, because I think that within the unconscious contribution is intuition, is connecting to people in ways that are really mysterious. And, you know, as I said, and, you know, the great part, yes.
It's also empathy. It's feeling with. And I'm an empath, and so I know what people are feeling more than what they're thinking. When I talk to them, I pick up on feelings. And I have to protect myself because I'm very sensitive. But yeah, you guys are all empaths and very good at, you know what each other are, you're intuitive with each other, and then you're intuitive with the story and the feelings.
Yeah, all of that. See, press the button.
Sorry, keep doing that. Then the person feels validated who told their story too, that they'll often say, you really captured it. Or if we didn't, they'll say, could you redo that one part? You know, so we can do that for them too. So we're really in service to them. It feels really good for them to see their life mirrored back. I feel like I've developed a lot since we started doing it.
And I think it is the power of the unconscious contribution there. I mean, you know, you've got format, you've got skills going in and all of that, you know, things you're doing to develop trust. But when the magic is there, it's the unconscious contribution. And in those sort of situations, you get magic. And at the same time, I almost hesitate to bring this up, but anyway, it's the dark side of it. Cynthia.
I was just thinking, and it came to mind as we were talking about all of this, I came to mind a couple things with my grandmother that that I don't quite know how relate, but it feels like it's related. My grandparents didn't have the greatest marriage, or at least, you know, they fought a lot. They had a lot of issues, and, you know, there was sort of an open secret that he cheated on her with somebody else for most of the time. But there was also this deep love, and they stayed together. They didn't divorce or anything. But, you know, like one of the things I remember was sometimes just going down and watching them dance in the kitchen with no music. And I also remember the story, and I think maybe it comes in the stories they're told, because my grandmother liked to tell stories. But I remember this, and she told it like this little lesson with a moral to it. I guess my grandfather used to bring her little sandwich. he had to get up first and then go to work, and then she would get up later and take care of and get the kids to school. And he would bring her a little piece of, he'd bring her a sandwich and some coffee and leave it at her bedside. And then it stopped. Suddenly it just stopped out of nowhere. And she thought, oh God, is he mad at me? Is something else wrong? And she didn't say anything for a long time. And then she did. And she said, well, what happened? Why aren't you giving me my sandwich? And she said, what do you mean I'm doing it? I've been doing it every morning. It turns out the dog was eating the sandwich.
What a wonderful story.
And the moral of that story is you always have to communicate and talk, because they could have had a divorce over that.
Yeah, you're right. Well, to be really technical, I guess that is making the unconscious contribution conscious so you can solve the problem. Okay. Yeah, that's what it's like. The dark side of it is men who are very skilled at grooming girls for the sex trade have all sorts of unconscious contribution going on for them. Then and there it's almost conscious is not unconscious, but the person receiving it, it's unconscious. Mm-hmm. So the unconscious contribution does enable us to have another tool to look at what is evil and what is destructive. I mean, he was a sort of, short man with a funny mustache who was rather easily satirized and mimicked by Charlie Chaplin. And Hitler just connected to tens of millions of people, because they had an odd thing that I can't pronounce her name in German, but the great German cinematographer, the woman who was devoted to Hitler, was the reason, we've got all this great footage now. And the proof is there, just the proof is there. Somehow or other he connected to them. And it wasn't even that difficult for Charlie Chaplin to mock him. But he had something, and we've got word for it, charisma, or, use the word connection. And of course you've got it happening now in a way that ends in some form on the 20th of next month. But yeah, how? And often we can't understand it. We often, there is a mystery here. How did this person connect to all of those? You can analyze, you can look at it, you can write about it, I could talk about it, you could talk about it. But absolutely, that's the unconscious contribution.
It's between the lines. Do you mind if can I say something?
Yeah, go.
Okay, cool. I just interject. There's a poem, a piece of which was quoted on YouTube, and I managed to find it. But it's Stickney. It's Trumbull Stickney. If that rings a bell. But he says, I cannot understand you. 'Tis because you lean over my meaning's edge and feel a dizziness of the things I have not said.
Read it again slower so we can get the words easier.
I cannot understand you. 'Tis because you lean over my meaning's edge and feel a dizziness of the things I have not said.
No. Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah.
Who is it?
But just not one. It's I don't know who Trumbull Stick.
How do you spell the last name?
Stick, N-E-Y.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, that sort of, that's, I guess one way to think of it, that is the area of the unconscious contribution. And, we can need to take it really seriously when things are going wrong and find a way to value it when things are going right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, because someone here said Sophie Loren's latest movie, and she's my age, it's just so good. I think she is someone who really did something. So she handled her beauty. You probably, if you're beautiful, you got to be a bit dismissive or devaluing of it. I imagine something like that. Because a lot of people who are beautiful, they're hurt by it. I know that, just in terms of my work, clients. Beauty can be not necessarily not necessarily end up being a useful thing for somebody. And bring it back to hope, and bring it, because I think one of the things we do have in Pelham is memory links. Okay, so we can say a particular situation, different people will have different reactions to it, and we've got to be sensitive of people who have difficult times. So here we've got to be sensitive to people who have difficult times about Christmas. I mean, Christmas is just easy for me and I really like it. And I grew up with Christmas being on the beach. And, my mother would cook the meal and we'd have a picnic because it was midsummer in Australia. Christmas is midsummer. So I've got my memory links about Christmas. Other people have got their memory links about Christmas. And, not everybody, is going to experience it as a time of hope. Some people will, I do, but some people won't. Or Hanukkah is a celebration of hope, but at the same time, someone's going to have their particular memory links about it. So what we're looking at with hope is sort of, how do you, last time I talked about sources of hope in contribution from hurt, purpose, and true rest. And I still feel that they are sources of hope. So, there are ways we can go after it. But I think we also need, and I think within Pelham, we need to be open to letting it in. We need to be open to letting it in and not squashing it. But, one of that, and, what I'm trying to do here is balance things. Because, I am saying hope can be this really important source of energy and belief in ourselves and belief in the world. that's a positive side of it. That's the, one really good bottle of wine. That's not 2 bottles of wine every night, because there is also false hope. There's destructive hope. And once again, going back to, you could almost say that FDR and Churchill had to not put out too much hope at all. And yet they, on an unconscious level, they communicated it. But they didn't promise it. And there is something about the almost a combination of hope and the pendulum. Because for some of us, highs of hope can be really dangerous, because what they come down to is just decimating. I used to have a tendency to what I called hope highs. And I had a sort of little way of talking about it to myself and to other people. I'm doing some work on it, therapeutic work on it. It was sort of moonlight walk. Because one of the place I had in Italy that was up on the hills, and my first marriage had broken up. And, I'd go for a moonlight walk and, I've got this plan. I'm going to come through this. I'm going to do that. And then I just come down to a terrible low. And I learned when I was going through, this is just me, when I was going through a certain sort of pain, hope didn't work. Okay, I had to be really careful. And I called them hope highs and moonlight walks, sort of almost off the chart in unrealism. And this is an example of the pendulum. And I learned going through that, and sadly it was replicated, that I couldn't afford 1 glass of wine. Because I'd relax and I'd get into one of these highs, and they were fine, except they led to the low. And I couldn't handle the low. I mean, I couldn't handle, in the low, I couldn't handle the pain I had, the heartbreak I had. So I just had to really watch my highs like crazy. So, that sort of a balance of looking at hope. And I guess that's sort of the, unconscious contribution. I remember one friend of mine said, when I was in one of these places, he said, I'm sorry, Peter, I'm taking the keys. I'm not going to let you drive the car tonight. I wasn't drunk or anything. I hadn't even had a glass of wine. But he said, I'm sorry, I'm taking the keys. And I guess I thought I was the world's best driver. I was going to do this. I was going to do that. I can handle this pain. No, then I hit a low. And it's a particular use of the pendulum in relationship to hope. And it's also the sort of, I guess a simple way of saying it, when there's a bunch of hurt around, we might have to make the unconscious contribution conscious. And maybe that relates to what you were saying, Mary, because you had to be aware that John still loved his wife, right? You couldn't just say it had been, say he was a widower, okay, rather than his wife still being alive. Well, that's easier. That was the position Joe Biden was in. But So I think, you know, okay, I know he still loves that person who is alive. So I've got to work out all my stuff rather than just letting a really good relationship develop in its own way. So I guess there are times when we're thinking, oh, okay, what's the unconscious conscious contribution going on here? Anyone like to come in? Do you want to come in, tall Nikki?
Don't think that it's all a bit too big, so I'm just trying to sort of expand my mind around all of it at once. I haven't got anything to say at the moment.
Yeah. I think that's right. It is big. It's a big theme. I think you could say, could Barack Obama got elected because he ran a brilliant campaign based on hope. And I was there at his first inaugural. I was in DC. I say with pride. Standing at the back, and it was on television. If you're going to go to the inaugural, take some squash cardboard boxes with you, because you've got to stand on them, because the ground's going to be too cold. The ground was frozen. And I felt his inaugural was a bit flat. I think it was intentional. That's my guess. He can stir people up at the drop of a hat. He knows that. You know, you got to be careful of that. Fritz Perls got at this in terms of he developed a lot of stuff around expectations. I think he went a little too far with it because he was a brilliant practitioner, but he wasn't that, and had great ideas, but he wasn't that good a theoretician. And he developed, he called it the Gestalt prayer, was, I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations. You're not in this world to live up to mine. If we meet, that's wonderful. If we don't, that's okay. And, you know, he had a whole thing about being careful about expectations, which in a sense is being careful about hope. Mary.
I just wanted to share the interesting anyway, thought about memory links that I had when I was talking to you in our meeting before this today. And Peter and I were talking about Christmas, and I said this year and last year I wasn't in a depression. Most of my adult life, even when I was having depressions that were less severe, I was depressed at Christmas time. So every little thing connected with it, you know, deciding what to eat and getting the meal and wrapping the presents, and like everything was an ordeal. And last year and this year, it's such fun to be able to enjoy it. And I realized that the power of whatever it is, 15 to, you know, about 50 years of miserable Christmases, it did not wipe out the power of the from 0 to 7 good Christmases. When I didn't know there was divorce on the horizon and all the rest of it. And probably some of the later ones were okay, but they were more complicated. But those very early, like waking up and opening the stockings and simple little things that you had in the 50s when there wasn't much money around. And like those positive memory links just outlasted those years and years of misery at this time of year. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it was interesting about how memory links work.
Yeah, no, it is interesting about how memory links work. Cynthia.
Well, I was thinking about, because I was thinking about since the last one when you were talking about hope and about how it comes from, and my first reaction was like, oh no, it's health and strength first. And I think maybe it's coming from a material force perfection and having hopes that have been dashed. And I mean, I've had 2 careers that have fallen apart. And I think that for me, I think I need to have hope be kind of quiet, hope be kind
I
of.
missed a word there. Your volume's a bit down.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think my voice went down because this is kind of an emotional thing for me.
Yeah,
I think for me, for hope to be safe, I think I need it to be small. Knowing that just to kind of, and not to be hoping for anything in particular, but to just know that there's goodness in the world and that, everything's not awful. And for me, actually, I find memory links to be a much safer, like looking back at the past. It's like, okay, yeah, this might be hard right now, but I've been through hard times before. I've gotten through it. I'm going to get through this, and I think, because when I think about having hope with purpose or something big, and I just like, no, I don't even want to go there, because it's like I don't, it's uncertain. You don't know if something's going to happen, and if it doesn't happen the way you expect it, it's or you do you get involved in your purpose and things fall apart, or people aren't listening, or people don't seem to care what you're doing. But having the sort of a quiet hope seems safer to me, and I think I convey that. I'm thinking about, sorry, I'm going on a bit, but I'm thinking about my work as an astrologer, and I can see, I mean, you can see when things are going to be more difficult for people, and that's really kind of, and also when things are going to be nice for people. And there are some astrologers, there's a lot of, it's a particularly common in new agey astrologers, everything's going to be wonderful. We're going to have this great ascension, and we're, and this is a time of transformation. Although as an astrologer, I know transformation is often a euphemism for a difficult time, but because you don't want to give them a hard time. But for me, and I'm thinking about, you're talking about like people saying that you're going to have a hard time. I think for me, I think the reason, because I know it's like that too, I found much more hope in President-elect Biden's talk about, yeah, this is going to be a really rough time. We're going to be sad. But I think there's a hope because you have a sense that the person in charge knows it's difficult and has got it, whereas if you have, like, sorry about getting into the politics, if you have like, the other one, say, oh yeah, everything's fine, it's going to go away like a miracle, and it's not. You just sort of feel like you're, I don't know, you don't feel like anybody's in charge, and you've got to, because it's, I was always like that. I always knew, people could tell me, oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I knew when it wasn't going to fine. And it's much easier if somebody says, yeah, this is tough. It's going to be tough. And we're going to, and there's that sort of sense, but we're going to get through it. Even if they don't say it, there's that sense of it. So sorry, I went on a bit, but I had my thoughts were going.
No, you messed up saying I went on too long. That's homework, okay? Yes, cease.
About as advisors, and this was a lesson for what maybe I've said it before, but getting over these surgeries and everything. Well, I still felt like I was just dragging myself after all these, hospitals. I could stay awake for like a couple of hours, and then I would go sleep for 4 hours, and I was just so discouraged. I was thinking like my whole life is gonna be like this. What's, I went through all this, and so this past week I went to 2 different doctors, and they looked at my medications. They said, why are you taking this? this is out. No, this one, no. You know, the reason you had surgery was so that you would be okay. So you don't need these medicines anymore. So they were just, and then I still had a lot of sleepiness. And then I went to a doctor yesterday and he said, again, why are you taking this? Well, somebody told me to take it. I said, no, you know, this, you know, just, I think that for me, the lesson was checking on what somebody told me before might not be what I needed now. You know, what I actually had the surgery so I wouldn't need this stuff. So, so yesterday was like the first time that I didn't use this medicine during the day, and I feel much brighter today and more with it. And so it's not for me to learn to make assumptions about something. And it was really, what was really surprising, these doctors were like, after they explained this, they were like hilarious. They were telling jokes and they were talking about some movies they saw, you know, and it was like we were just buddies or something. And it just made me feel so much more up and hopeful. And that's the way I'm feeling today. But that I could have just gone on taking those medicines for a long time and wondering why I wasn't doing well. So that was a real lesson for me. That was 2 months of, bad word here, that I went through that I wouldn't have had to gone through.
Yeah.
So the advisor part is when I'm feeling that way, is to check it out with somebody who knows about that particular thing.
Yeah, and that's evaluation strata. You know, but just to bring that into unconscious contribution, I think there's possibly destructive unconscious contribution in professionals with their doctors or with the work you and I do or have done, is sort of conveying a certainty, you know. So there's an unconscious contribution. I guess unconscious contributions around nations and around groups of people. You know, there's sort of group unconscious contributions, plus or minus. And I think the unconscious contribution of, I'm a doctor, I'll come across with certainty. And that communicates. And then, you know, the doctor said take the medication, so I'm going to take the medication. And I think they convey something. I feel attorneys can do it as well. The really bad attorneys will, you know, will offer you a solution that's unrealistic. It might not come back. So if you're the client of the attorney, you know, hope unconscious contribution goes way up. You know, and this guy's a turkey. You shouldn't be offering that. You know, maybe it's going to go wrong. I've been in that situation, you know, firing the wrong attorney. And I guess getting the second opinion of the doctor, because, and I guess that's what democracy is, isn't it? And getting a second opinion on the politicians. You know.
Maybe there's an important difference between oh my God. Sorry. Carrie Fisher did a one-woman play, Mary, called Wishful Drinking. But anyway, the difference between wishful thinking and hope. And it feels to me like it's, if there's a grounding in true acceptance of what is first, or in the steps, accepting life on life's terms, so that you have like FDR, or you have Churchill, or you have now Biden. If anyone says this is and will be hard, this is what it feels like to be here now, is there's this Black comedian, I can't remember, it was a long time ago, but it was still, she said, do not offer me hope. She says, say hope and I will punch you in the throat. Something like really violent like that.
Yeah.
And but I think that it's incredibly steadying to do the acceptance of how things are now, that it's quite miserable from where we sit. That is a calm, and there's a stillness to that, and there's love in it, to keep one another company in this place first. And then from there, there's a hope that burns in the right place. It's not way up or way out or too big or too much. So I think I have a feeling for what you're saying.
Yeah. I know, I think that's right, because I'm, I do go back with perplexity to Leah. But I think that's what, there's something there that love will endure, something good will endure, even though that there is no bleaker moment, than the last act of King Lear. But yeah, something goes on. And I think it's sort of having the small hope.
What is the feeling?
And I guess that was my, when I just sort of had to have those big hopes, okay, after my first divorce, and it didn't work. Sorry, Tamara.
I really wanted to ask you about King Lear and wondering what it means after that. It's just devastation. It's just, wow. It's just ruin and wreckage. It's not unlike how we're all sitting here politically now and with COVID. But what is it about King Lear that you said there was something about leaving that play feeling?
This is my prejudices, okay. I think it's just the extent of the art, I mean, the depth of the art. Yeah, I guess other things, the depth of the art means, I think it's one of those things that's almost mysterious, but I think the depth of the art means, okay, we can endure that, but we can go on, and somehow why is Faulkner a better writer than somebody else? When he wrote long sentences that you can't understand. And I think it's just the depth that great artists get to. I like the expression high seriousness. It's an expression used in art history. Somehow we're looking at this. I guess the end of King Lear is, we're looking at the human soul, and I'm not afraid to look at the human soul. That's, again, not mentioning names. I think we're being very disciplined. You can just feel the shallowness, the shallowness of even what they're doing, even if they're scary. There's some, and I guess that was true of you know, Nazis in their fancy uniforms and their clever rhetoric and enormous sense of superiority. Maybe that's something, you know, maybe if you've got hope with superiority, you're in trouble. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a sort of, that's a sort of guess, just guessing.
Yeah, there's something about
there's something
honoring of
about
the
that.
human condition that maybe
because
takes the worst of the shame out of the suffering. And if there's some feeling of honoring oneself,
I think so.
And being in the human condition. But I know that with clients, it's very profound for them to be able to land safely, not in a problem saturated story, but just to sit with what has been and what is. And I remember interjecting when I felt like it was the right thing to say. I would say, abandon all hope here.
Yes.
It would be sometimes the first real laugh, but it was kind of like, let us begin there. And then, but we can't build anything on top of wishful push. You know, you got to keep. It's like I'm just collapsing face first on the couch. I got here, and that's sort of like, well done, and that's it for the work today. See you next week. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great what you're saying, Tamara. I was also kind of maybe on a different thing. I was talking about the second opinion from doctors, or talking about the second opinion from lawyers, but oftentimes I don't think I do that in my life. Like, let's say I'm thinking about with my church. I've with the Quakers, I've done some things not intentionally bad, but they didn't have a good outcome. Let's put it that way. And just and nobody came up and said you're a crazy idiot, but that's how I felt. And so I think what I'm feeling is like getting a second opinion, you know, from the opinion that I'm giving myself. I'm assuming all these thoughts that nobody has actually said to me, but I don't get that second opinion sometimes from other people about, they might say, yes, you made a mistake, but there wouldn't be the horror or whatever that I'm putting on it. You know? And that's interesting to think about, just everyday things. And I know I've been in not recently, but in relationships that weren't very good, and I took it all on myself. That it was my fault. And you know, it's almost like I don't look at the second opinions from some other people. Not everybody feels that way, you know. So this is interesting how this thinking permeates different situations.
I think I think you could, I think there's just a statement, get a second opinion, and making it sort of bigger, deeper. I think it's really nice. Get a second opinion. So it sort of means something more than just a practical suggestion in this particular situation. And I guess our stuff about evaluation strata, in a way, is you defined it. Get a second opinion. Yeah. Okay, we'll end there. I think it's a good one to end sort of quietly on. because there's a lot in it. You know, going back to Studs Terkel, Hope Dies Last. And yet, you know, today we're also looking at the danger of it. So we'll just end up. I'll go first. I'm Peter. In Norfolk. I'm in Norfolk, in England. Yeah, I guess I like this theme of hope. I came, if I can just, I'll try and keep this brief. I came up with it because someone put together and paid all the money, a big sort of reunion of Pelham people in Ann Arbor, Michigan, some years ago. He ran a bookstore, a New Age bookstore. And they paid, you know, a lot of money to get me there, and all these people came. And he said, "Look, Peter, you know, the people in the audience are going to be sort of New Age people. I know it's not what you do, but you know, do whatever you like. But I'm just sort of saying that." And I thought, okay, I want to adapt the material so it had some zing there in that situation. So I came up with stuff about hope, and then I've presented it to my philosophy group. So yeah, anyway, I appreciate you. So I get a chance to develop it a bit more. That's me. Nikki?
Hi, so I'm Nikki. I'm in Wimbledon, London, and I thank everybody. It's been really interesting. And I think what my struggle with it is because I don't dare, I know for me it's just bad news to dare to have hope, because then it's always crash. And that's my memory links, the deepest memory links about it. So sort of I'm having to, that's why I said, I'm having to process all this just in my head. That's why I'm going, I've got to get my head around it. Because, anyway, I think I've explained myself. Thank you. It's been very interesting.
Okay. Tamara?
I'm Tamara in San Francisco, and I really like this hope. Yeah, I like kicking this one around because it's one that I've rejected outright. So this is good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Cynthia?
Cynthia, I'm KKK. And actually, I was thinking about something that was reminded to me about. There was a Swedish concept called lagom, and what that is, it is just enough. And I know I had some relatives who visited us from Sweden, and they taught me about this because they knew I was learning Swedish. And the idea is it's supposed to, it sort of permeates, or it's supposed to permeate like the culture, not too much, but just enough. And I think that fits really well with hope.
How do you spell it? I love collecting words.
LAGOM. And
LAGOM. Yeah.
And I probably did not pronounce it correctly because Swedish has like, English has about 11 or 12 vowel sounds. Swedish has 17. So I don't know how many times I was told, it's that ooh, it's ooh. The E, it's E.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Don't trust my pronunciation.
Yeah. Mary.
I'm Mary in Rosarito Beach.
Okay.
Thank you, it's very interesting.
Cease.
Cease in Tampa, Florida. I think I'm really lucky to be in Tampa. It's gorgeous today. it's probably 75 degrees here. There's birds and it's just a lovely, lovely day. And it really fits for me with what our theme has been on hope. You know, this is hopeful to see such a beautiful day. And then our conversation was very hopeful. I had a little anecdote, but I'm not sure if it fits here. But my husband, should I go or not go with that?
Yeah, go with it.
Okay. You know, we've been talking about politics, and my husband's very left person, but he's reading the paper today and he's so mad. And I said, well, what can you believe what Trump did? And he said, he's actually did something right. This CARES bill for, he said, he saw that this money isn't going in the right places and they're giving all the money to the rich. Why did he wait till now to do this? You know, and that was really interesting to me. That this, I don't know how, I haven't figured out how to put it all together, but my denigration of him had not actually maybe been completely accurate. And there was nothing that I could have done about it, but just putting just a, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, just some kind of a name on him wouldn't have been accurate either. So not that I want him to be president, but it's just an eye-opening thing for me.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Okay, Linda, thank you so much for coming. And on Sunday, which relates to this, I'm going to bring in David Pellin's concept of refuge, okay, which sort of relate to true rest and the calm. And this theme of hope. Okay, bye-bye.
I just want to say, in fact, everyone here is going to be at a virtual Pellin. It's not next week. What am I talking about? I'm doing it too early. Sorry.
Yeah,
there is a meeting next Wednesday as well as Sunday, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.